What up? I'm Ben Freeman from FREEMAN-PEDIA.com, and this is SAQsDAY. SAQsDAY is where I take some of the released SAQs that are still relevant to the course and I break them down with you with a few tips and tricks along the way. The actual exam opens up with 55 questions in 55 minutes. And then immediately after that, they'll give you 4 SAQs. It'll look something like this. There's 4 questions, but you only have to do 3 of them. Question 1 will be from any time in the course and have a secondary source as its stimulus. Question 2 will be from any time in the course and have a primary source as its stimulus. You'll then have to choose between question 3 and 4. So for the last 2, you'll need to read them both and pick the one you think you can do the most damage on. Question 3 will be from the first half of the course, somewhere 1200 to 1750, and question 4 will be from the second half, from 1750 to 2001. All right, so you know how it works, so let's jump right into it. Today we start with an SAQ from 2017, or as I like to call it, AP World Classic. That's right, the course was redesigned back in 2019 to something more similar to what it looks like right now. And since you're in AP World History, you probably already know that the year 2017 was before the year 2019. So a few of the SAQs we'll break down here on SAQsDAY will actually be from before that redesign, and that's totally fine. So they may look slightly different, but I'll walk you through those that are slightly different, but we'll answer them in the way that they would expect you to do this May. So we're going to focus on all of these on SAQsDAY using the current exam lens. All right, there's 3 rules I find that you should follow. Some people use an acronym. I used to use acronyms. I don't know if they're really that helpful in the long run, but there's 3 kind of skills, and we'll be doing them every single time when we go through an SAQ. It's the way you should approach all of them. The only real way you should ever not do well on an SAQ is if you just don't know it. If you're like, I don't know any of these words, that's fine, but you should never miss a point on something you know. So there's good ways to do that. There's ways to kind of like keep your time short as opposed to having to go back and reread things over and over. So I'm going to walk you through the 3 rules as we go through each one of these each week here on SAQsDAY. Rule number 1, focus the lens. So what are they actually asking you to do? So before you even check the stimulus or the image or a reading or anything like that, read A, read B, read C, and kind of see what they want you to be looking for, what you're supposed to find either in the stimulus or if there's not a stimulus, in the case of the 3rd or 4th question on an SAQ, then what do they want from your brain? So here's the 2017 one again. All right, so here they are, A, B, and C. They'll all have A, B, and C. This is even more important than reading a passage or looking at an image. You notice anything antiquated here? I don't know how many of these you've done in class, but they don't really use identify and explain anymore. They'll use identify, they'll use explain, but they won't use identify and explain. So since 2018, they've all had that identify, explain. They haven't said identify and explain, but this is 2017, this is an older one, so that's fine. A, identify and explain one way in which the interaction depicted in the image represents a continuity in Chinese imperial history. B, identify and explain another way in which the interaction depicted in the image represents a continuity in Chinese imperial history. C, identify and explain one way in which the interaction between Imperial China and Central Asian nomads changed after 1100 CE. And don't be afraid to write on the exam. The exam you paid a lot of money for, your county paid a lot of money for, your parents paid a lot of money for. So write all over it. Like when you get this A, B, and C here on this one, you want to make sure you find what they're looking for. Now, sometimes they used to do this capitalization bit, explain one, explain another, explain one. Sometimes, and you'll see this later on in future episodes, they'll underline stuff, but that's really not the common way to do it anymore. So you're gonna have to like kind of butcher these because that looks like a bunch of words. Like a bunch of words are just a bunch of words. But if you looking and you see kind of says the same thing over and over again, so it's asking about the interaction. So how is the interaction something that stayed the same? And then name another way of that. And then the 3rd one is how that interactions between the Chinese imperial dynasty governments and Central Asian nomads, how did that change after 1100? That may sound scary, and a lot of these actually kind of sound scary. Don't get scared. Sometimes, like letter C, if you're looking at letter C and you're like, nomads, Imperial China after 1100, the answer is the simplest answer on the entire exam. Like, you can you know that answer. When you hear it, you're like, oh, yeah. But, so you need to make sure you know what you're looking for right away. So you have the lens, you know what, we're looking at some interaction. So that's our lens right now. What is this interaction? Okay, so our lens is to focus on the interaction. Rule number 2 is check the stimulus. So it's from the Song Dynasty, circa 1100, so around 1100 CE, which is technically before the course starts, but don't worry about it. Sometimes that circa is helpful. Circa means around, so it's around 1200. So here we are in 1100. The Song Dynasty, that's the first thing your teacher probably said to you, Song Dynasty China. So the years really don't matter, but that's where this image is from. But this is so this is early in the course. And Song Dynasty, that's the first thing my teacher was talking about in 1.1. So we got a Chinese general meeting with a Uyghur nomad out in the frontiers here. You may have heard the Uyghurs in the news lately with the whole deal with Chinese slave labor in Western China, which is, I don't know when you're watching this, but I'm here in 2022, it's probably still a big deal. The Uyghurs are Central Asian, or at this today, Western Chinese Muslims, and they're being persecuted for being a minority, which, you know, get ready, AP World History, that's kind of what the course is about. So anyway, but here, the Uyghur nomad is bowing down to the Chinese general. All right, so that's all you need from the stimulus. Rule 3, answer the prompt. Okay, so we're back here at the ABC and the prompts. So we've kind of know what we were looking for. There's something about the interactions. We need to see what's going on with the interactions. And we saw what the interaction was. It was a guy bowing down to another. So Uyghur nomads are bowing down to Chinese generals in the beginning of the course, like early on Song Dynasty stuff. And since they're saying identify and explain, you basically need to answer the prompt with something and then explain it. Again, this isn't how they're going to do it on your exam. This is the way they used to do it in 2017. So identify and explain. You may see identify where you just have to name it, or explain, which means you kind of have to say something and then explain it as well, but you won't see this together like this. All right, so A and B are both talking about a continuity. So how's what you see a continuity? I got a couple things that I would have gone with here. This is AP World Classic, so they wouldn't expect you to know a bunch of stuff before 1200 the way this old style test would have. But in AP World Classic, China, since the Han Dynasty, was expanding to the west. They're constantly running into all these nomadic people. Technically, that's how the Silk Road started. They were going looking for allies and kept moving west and west and west and west. And so then they kind of stayed there and set up trade routes, and then that eventually becomes the Silk Road. And so as they went west, they ran into people like the Tatars, or I call them the Tatars. The Tatars is probably a better term. The Uyghurs, some pre-Mongol types out there, nomadic, pastoral nomads, and those people took a tributary relationship towards China. So that's also what you're seeing in the image with the Uyghurs. So that would have been a continuity you could have picked up on for A. Looking at B here, AP World Classic was sometimes a bit lazy. They just like, yeah, name another one. Okay, fine, so we'll do another one. So another way to look at this continuity, because again, that's what it says there. By the way, if I'm throwing you off there with continuity is just something that stays the same over a long period of time. So when you think China's kind of a big deal in AP World History, like what's been staying the same the whole time? Or what stayed the same over a long period of time? So another continuity you could have said is how it was a reciprocal relationship. It wasn't just China smash kill, right? China would go to them. So relationships like the one in the image would be beneficial to both the Uyghur dude who's getting some finished goods, something, I don't know, maybe some fancy silks or something that would probably be a little high end, but who knows what he's getting. He's getting some finished good. And the general here is probably getting, I don't know, horses. All right, so A and B are asking the same thing. Let's move on to letter C. Identify, explain one way in which the interaction seen in the image changes after the year 1100. Look, I don't know you. I don't know your teacher. But you know who the Mongols are, right? Maybe you haven't got there this far in the year. Maybe you've heard of the Mongols, right? That's who they were. That's a slight change. Look back at the image. Does this look like a pose Genghis Khan or Kublai Khan would have taken with the Chinese? Hell no, that never would have happened. You know what that is? That's a change. I'd go with that. And by the way, don't just say, oh, the Mongols were different. That was a change. Identify and explain. Or just for explain. That's not going to get you the point. You need to explain how they were different. You can't just be like, Mongols were different. It's not going to get it. So I would get into the Khanates and how the nomadic pastoral nomads didn't kneel. They conquered the Chinese and basically everybody else and set up this massive empire and ruled over the Chinese as their own dynasty. Like, that's a complete change. So as much of that as you would know, again, it's an SAQ. It's a short answer question. They don't expect you to write forever, but that would get it for you. All right, that's the 2017 Nomads versus China SAQ. Speaking of the Mongols, next week, next SAQs Day, the 2022 Mongol SAQ. So I'll see you again next SAQs Day.